One of the most famous Mamorei Chazal that are said in this week's parsha is about Sarah Imenu, that she lived Meya v'Esrim Shana. She lived 127 years, and the Medrash says about those 127 years, the first Medrash Rabbah, Yodeya Hashem Yemei Samimim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the days of those who are Tmimim, full days, whole days, simple days, many different translations to that word Tmimim, V'nachalasam La'olam Tiyah, and their inheritance will be forever. Continues the Medrash. Kishem shehem tmimim, just as they are tmimim, these tzadikim, shenoisam tmimim. Their years are also tmimim. Bas chav ke bas chayim lenoi, bas kuf like bas esrim lechet, etc. Davaracher Sarah haisa tmimim b'masel. The subject of the shir that I'd like to discuss today is what does it mean to mimim, and what is really the Medrash trying to tell us? What's the subject of the Medrash? What was there about Sarah in particular that we say that she lived, I guess you call it a full life, a whole life? What are we trying to say and project about Sarah? I'm going to start off with a question which is not mine. My chavrusa today told me he heard this question last year, and it is an old question, but I think it's a question that it's worthwhile to think about. We would assume, at least I would assume, that Sarah was quite desperate for children. How do I know Sarah was desperate for children? Because she said to Avram, maybe take Hagar, marry Hagar, and I will have children. I'll be zeichet to have children through the fact that I gave you this Torah. So it seems that she wanted to have children. I heard once from a lady who didn't have children for many years. It's a very beautiful thought. It's worthwhile saying it over. She said, I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I didn't know what it was like to have children before I had them. Because if I would have known how wonderful it is to have children, I would have gone out of my mind for the 15 years or 20 years that I was married without children. But being I didn't really know what it was like to have children, so I was able to carry on. But now that I have children, I definitely would never be able to live another 20 years, so to speak, without having children. It's really a beautiful thought. We should all be thankful, appreciative of those who have children for the bracha that we have. So if I were to ask you, we say the days of Sarah, kulam shavim l'tov, would you say that they really were shav l'tov? She had 100 years of being barren. Not only that, she had a tzara called Hagar, who they seemed to have some kind of fighting with. She had Yishmael that was pestering Yitzchak. She had to live in the palace of Abimelech, Paroi, like being in a box when you go over the border. I don't know if she really had such a great life. How could Chazal say that Kulam Shavim L'Tov? It seems to me that definitely there would be a difference between the first 100 at least and the rest. What could be the answer to that question? That's a subject which we're going to, Mitzvah Shem, try to analyze today and come to some kind of a conclusion on that idea. That's question number one. I'd like to say something over which I heard from somebody once, which is a fascinating idea. We work, accomplish, and do things in a time frame. I have to do something, so I have a time frame that I do it in, and that time frame allows me different things. The time is a creation which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, then all actions that we do are done in the time. What is the time itself? Most of us assume that time is nothing. It's just something that in that reality we're able to do things. Listen to this question. We know that a person has 248 limbs in his body, and he has 365 other aspects of his body. One is connected to mitzvahs aseh, and one is connected to mitzvahs los aseh. We understand that every limb has a purpose, and therefore every limb gets its chiyus, gets its nourishment, it's nurtured from a certain mitzvah that's done. What is there to give in the day? Is my question understood? Do people understand the question?
No.
Lev, you hear the question?
No, I didn't understand it.
Okay. Ruve, do you have an answer? No. Okay, but you got the question? I can't hear you. You're off. You're.
I could use hearing it again.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm happy. I'm happy that it was that we get the opportunity. If you understand time as just a vehicle to accomplish, but that's not really the accomplishment. The accomplishment is what you do, and you do things in time. But time is just a vehicle that's where things are done. It doesn't really have any prominence of its own. What does it mean that we have lavim against 365 days? It's not something of importance. It's just it's some way that we're able to do things in time. But time isn't something that's really important to us. Time is just the way that we are able to do things. You know, it's just very hard to explain in a certain sense because we live so much with time. But what's the advantage of time? I would like to, you know what? I'm going to explain my question with something which I heard once from Rav Noach Weinberg. This is a fantastic mashal. So imagine you're sitting on the bus going from Yerushalayim to Beit Shemesh, and the guy sitting next to you has a stack this thick of $100 bills. And he's holding those $100 bills. And every 15 seconds, he peels off one $100 bill and throws it out the window. Wait another 15 seconds. He looks at his watch, peels another $100 bill off, and throws it out the window. And you're watching this the whole trip from Yerushalayim to Beit Shemesh. What would you say about that guy? You don't understand my question this time either?
OCD.
This time it's pretty you'd say he's crazy. What's he doing? Wasting his time? Right? That's what you would say, right?
Wasting his money.
He has a purpose.
What?
Money.
What'd you say?
Wasting his money.
No, but he has a purpose.
I don't know if it's my volume. What'd you say?
He's saying not wasting time, wasting money.
He's not wasting time, he's wasting money. Okay. So Rav Noach Weinberg said the guy sitting next to him, watching him, is wasting time. How much is your time worth? The guy who has looking at the scenery like Peretz's background, he's on the bus and he's watching all the scenery. He's peeling off $100 bills.
Because he's wasting time.
No, because
He's wasting time.
He's wasting time.
He's wasting time. And then you have people, I just want to use this expression since I'm American, so I love American expressions because they're so terrible. What am I going to do to kill time? Can you just tell me what in the world does that mean? You want to kill time. How do you shoot it exactly? Because time, it's not, if you have nothing to do, time is worthless. Because time is just a medium that you do things in. Meaning is you wrote a book, you went swimming, you learned to block Gemara, you daven. You just need to have time in order to do it. But is really time something of value? Let's take this one step further back. Is money of any value?
Both time and money are of value.
I want to ask my treasurer, Aryeh, is money of any value?
Try to pay bills without it.
What did he say?
Okay, you could have been a lawyer. You're not answering my question. Money is of no value. Money is good because you can use it to do things that have value. Money doesn't really have any value. Sometimes people have, if you have a lot of money, so it could be that you become valuable and you can do things without spending it. But money by itself, money is not of value. It's just a medium to accomplish things. Right? We learned this. My grandmother, Alav Shalom, taught me this on Tisha B'Av. That's the idea of this lady who took all her gold and silver and threw it out into the street because she didn't have bread to eat. Can't eat it. Nowadays, you can't even throw it out because it's all paperless. You know what I mean? It's just, what are you going to do? Show your phone someplace? You can't even throw out your money. Anyways, but the money doesn't really have any value. So much does money have no value. And this is very un-American because in America, money has a lot of value. The most muksa item that there is money because it has no purpose. Money is valueless. That's pretty amazing. But money is very important. Why? Because you could use money to do very important things. I'm not playing down money. I'm just putting it in a proper perspective. It's good because you could use it to do something else. Time is like that too. Is time of any value?
Yes.
Why?
Can accomplish.
Oh, so it's not, it enables you to do something of value.
Right.
So
But
it's not
in
intrinsic.
itself is not valuable. It's just, it enables you. It's like having a car. Is a car a good thing to do? If you have someplace to go. But if you have nowhere to go, the car is useless. Right? This is not a philosophical question. It's a practical thing. This is the way that most people understand time. So if time is not anything of real value, so how could it be that the lavim are in time? It has to be like your aver. A person has a finger, you have a nose, you have a tongue, you have a toe. All of these things have value. Why? Because they do things. They themselves are valuable. What does time do?
It allows you to use them.
It allows you
But
to-
that's not intrinsic. It's not the same level of value as your toe.
Very important.
I agree. It's 100%. It's very important. Just like money is important. I'm not saying money's not important. I'm just saying that it's only important because through it you can accomplish, but
So
not
what Rob
because
is
in
saying is
itself.
that I'm sorry, Rob is
What?
saying time is money. They say in America, time is money. They're both
Time is money.
valueless.
So right. So what I'm saying over here is, and the Chavetz Chaim said that money is time. You familiar with that story with the Chavetz Chaim? I'm going to share with you a story. This story is an amazing story, and I'm going to tell you the story the way that it's not so well known. This is a fascinating story. I heard this story from my uncle. He should be well, who he was there when it happened. The Ponevezher Rov used to come to Miami to collect money. And my uncle was a Rebbe in Miami at that time. This is in probably like 1968, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. And the Hanhola of the yeshiva, sometimes they had very difficult shilas, and they would wait for Gedolim used to come to collect money, and they would discuss it with the Gedolim, what they should do in their certain situations. And the Hanhola had a certain question, and they asked the Panovich Rov, what does he have to say? And the Panovich Rov said, ask the Hanhola, what do you have to say? And the person said an answer. And he said, that's a Telzer Svara. And he said that was the way that he spoke, in a, so to speak, a derogatory way, that's a inferior idea. And he said it's a Telzer Svara. And the person who heard this was a Talmud Chacham, was hurt. And the Panovich Rav saw that he hurt the person, which he didn't mean to do. So in order to appease him, he said, I want to tell you two things. First of all, you should know I myself learned in Telz. If I say it's a Telz Svara, doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. But I want to tell you a story. And this is how this whole thing, so to speak, came out. Said, when I was a bocher, I learned B'chavrusa with Rebbe Chanan Wasserman. And Rebbe Chanan Wasserman was not only a Talmud of the Chafetz Chaim, he was a Chassid of the Chafetz Chaim. Anything the Chafetz Chaim did, he was always questioning, figuring out. Everything had to be done. Chafetz Chaim did it, there has to be something major going on, and he would always pursue to get to the bottom of it. We were learning, and we had an argument about something, and we saw one of the Achronim say that this question is answered in a certain sefer. And Rabbi Chanan told me, he said, I saw the Mishnah Berurah brings down that sefer, so it must be that the Chafetz Chaim has that sefer. Let's go to the Rebbe, the Chafetz Chaim, and we'll get that sefer. Okay? Story within a story. I, the Panovich Rov, was learning in Telz, and then I decided to go to learn by the Chafetz Chaim. And the Telzer Rosh Hashiva was a little bit disappointed, because he felt that Telz is a very great yeshiva, and he's a good Rosh Hashiva, and why are you leaving a Sug Aleph place, so to speak, to go to a Sug Beis place? It's very hard for you to understand what was going, the picture of the yeshivas second in 1925. Anyways, I went to learn by the Chafetz Chaim, and when I used to go home, Bein Hazmanim, I used to pass through Telz, and my old Rosh Hashiva, I used to speak to him in learning, and he would always press me, tell me something over from the Chafetz Chaim. And I never said anything over, because I understood that there's a little bit of a point of contention over here, so I avoided saying anything over. Go back to the story. What happened was, they went to the Chafetz Chaim, and they said, we want to borrow this in the Sefer. So the Chafetz Chaim said, I don't have the Sefer. So Rabbi Chanan said, you don't have the Sefer, but in Siman so-and-so in the Mishnah Berurah, you quote it. So the Chafetz Chaim, he sighed, and he said, when I learned that Siman, I borrowed that Sefer for someone else. And he looked at his Svarim Shank. He had his one line, not like you see over here in the back, like 3 different things of Svarim. No. He had one column of Svarim, and it wasn't even full. And he looked at it, and he sighed, and Rabbi Chanan, so Chafetz Chaim sighed, he must have a reason that he's sighing. So he asked the Chafetz Chaim, why are you sighing? So Chafetz Chaim says, don't you see how many Svarim I have? So Rabbi Chanan said, what are you saying? So he said, how do I have Svarim? I have Sforim because I bought them with money. How do I have money? One of the ways that I have money is I get a salary from the yeshiva. How does the yeshiva have money? They go to Aryeh Beer. How do they have money? I raise money for the yeshiva. What a waste of time. Let's not raise money for the yeshiva, and I won't have Svarim, and I'll be able to sit and learn. That's why I was sighing, because I realized I wasted so much time amassing this collection. Okay? So that after this happened, when the Panovich Arov went by, tells, he told over this story to the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz. After the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz heard this story, every time he heard the name of the Chafetz Chaim, he stood up out of respect for him. He realized that the Chafetz Chaim lived on a different plane. So now there's time, and there's money, and there's Sfarim, right? Life is getting more complicated as we go by. But let's just get back to the subject that I wanted to really discuss. We have over here, money is just something to use to get what you want. Time is what you need in order to be able to do what you want. But those aren't the things that you're doing. If a person says, I want to procure vacation days, so what do you do with them? Nothing. What do we have to say? You're wasting your time, right? Time is only good. So now, the Marsha explains, the Marsha in Makis, at the end of Makis, explains everything which I said about time is wrong. Time means something else. We don't just have time in order to do things in those times. We affect the time. Time is a creation, is a putty that can be fashioned. And I'll show you what I'm saying. And all of you have heard this from me many times, but never in the frame of reference that we're talking about now. Every single year, Leil HaSeder, we do what? We go out of Mitzrayim. Bayomim hohem, bazman hazeh. The koach of being yoytze lecherus resurfaces, re-energizes the world in that time. Hayom haras olam. And there's that energy, a koach of chidush, that happens in that time. We can affect the days. Now let's just take this to a negative side. Why do we have Tisha B'Av on Tisha B'Av? What happened the night of Tisha B'Av?
Bechi, Meraglim.
Bechi. And that made it into a night of Bechi L'Doros. This is very different than what we started off with, saying that time is just a vehicle for us to be able to do things. We have to take the days, affect the days, do something with the days, and this is what the words in the Torah mean. He was ba yomim. He had days that he made those days full. Time is not a commodity just to do things in. Time is something that we affect and we change, and every second in our life, we're supposed to be doing something else. This is a revolutionary idea in what time is, even though we really are familiar with this concept from, as we mentioned before, places that we've seen it elsewhere. When I was a bocher, Baruch Hashem, I didn't have to deal with myself when I was a bocher. My Rabbeim had to deal with me. So my Rashiva was asked the following question by me. And this is really a great question for a teenager, but it takes a great person, in my opinion, to answer the question. Who was the greatest Torah scholar of all history? Arguably, we'll say Moshe Rabbeinu. I think that's like a good guess. Maybe someone say Rabbi Akiva, but we'll say Moshe Rabbeinu, and the reason why we're picking on him, I think, is obvious. And the Gemara says, Yiftach b'dorei kishmu b'dorei. Every person, every generation has their gadol, and their gadol, they're all equal. And I was extremely bothered by this because they're not equal. They're just not equal. How can you say they're equal? I will have to do with what I have. But it's just not what was before. How could we say that, as far as I know, we have nobody alive today that's just like the Chafetz Chaim? Anybody here know somebody who's like the Chafetz Chaim? I don't know anybody who's like the Chafetz Chaim. So how could we say that today's Gadol is like the Chafetz Chaim? He's just not. Anybody want to answer this question? Do you understand the question? Okay.
Noach was the greatest man of his time.
In his times, but what would he be in Avram's times?
No, not much.
Not much. So I asked this question to my Yeshiva, and I was a bacher about 16 or something like that, and he looked at me pathetically, like, how do you ask a stupid question? And listen to the question that he asked me. I have a schnapps glass, a shot glass, and I fill it to the brim. And since I'm speaking to Americans over here, I have a big gulp. You know what a big gulp is? Okay, I have a big gulp, which is like a cup that really a cow should be drinking out of it, but for some reason they have people drinking out of it. I have this big cup that's probably a quart. How big is it, Lev? A big gulp? A quart. I think that's what it is. Okay.
32 ounces.
32 ounces. So I have this shot glass that's this big, and I have this cup that's this big, and I fill them both up to the top. The Rosh asks me, so which one is fuller? As I said when I was younger, is it hotter in the city or the summer? Like, how are you supposed to answer that question? Which one is fuller? What kind of ridiculous question is that? So obviously the answer is that they're both the same. So he said, that's right. Yiftach b'dorei kishmu b'doro means each one fulfilled their potential to their maximum. They're the same. There's an aspect about them that's the same. Nobody said, "Lekam Moshe, lekam Navi B'Yisrael, Moshe Gabarnu." No one said that they, as I was brought up, equal shmikel. Nobody said that they're equal shmikel. It just means that there's an aspect, a certain aspect that they're 100% the same. So here we have a nakuda when we say things are equal. What do we mean when we say that they're equal, right? Are they the same? Where I was brought up in America, they said that all people are created equal, but some more equal than the others, right? But that's not what we're talking about right now. What we're talking about right now is that there's an aspect over here that everybody over here is equal. That's what's going on. A person had a busy day, and he comes home haggard, tired, frustrated, and his wife says, "How was today?" And all he could do is grunt, okay? And then he has the next day that nothing happens in his office or in his place of work. He sits there saying Tehillim like a good Jew. And his wife says, "How was today?" Which day was better? Which day was worse? The second day was much worse. Which day was harder? The first day was harder. Maybe if you have nothing going on at work for a month, maybe that'll get harder. But I'm not getting involved in that right now. But the bottom line is, when we say kulam shavim litov, she had all of her days. Sarah had all of her days were equal. Shavim litov. I challenge that the pshat in that Maimar Chazal is that she maximized them to the maximum. Some days were schnapps glasses, and some days were big gulps. What someone want to say?
Yeah, so now we're talking not the concept of equality, but equivalence. Equivalent.
We're talking about.
In other words, if I have a 20 shekel bill in my pocket and you have two 10 shekel coins, it's not equal, it's not the same, they're equivalent, got the same purchasing power.
That's correct. That's correct. But here we're saying you a little bit more different than that. We're saying, what did the person accomplish what he's supposed to do? And I'll just use this. I just want to finish off one more mushal. A person has two students. One of them is super bright, and he got a 92 on the course. And the other student is mediocre, and he worked himself to the bone, and he got a 92 on the course. Which one did better?
Second one.
What, he got the same grade?
Yeah, he worked very hard.
Oh, so then there are other things that factor in also, right? It's not only the grade on the bottom of the page or the top of the page. There's a lot more that goes into it. So when we say that she had good days, that means she had fulfilled days. She did with each day what she was supposed to do. As a barren lady, she was successful. And as a mother raising a child, she was successful. And each day, she maximized its full potential. And that's called kulam shavim latov. That's a person who is a Baba Yomim. I have made each day into a Rembrandt that it could be. The best that it could be. That is an unbelievable accomplishment for a person. That's what it means when we say that Sarah was Baba Yomim. What does the word tamimim mean? We mentioned when I quoted the Medrash inside, it has many simple, complete, wholesome. All of these things are ideas that the word tamimus means. She maximized them. That's one thing. There's another thing. There's one other issue, another answer which can be given to this question. This is not my answer, somebody else's answer. There's another answer. In English, they say that disappointment is born out of expectations. If you have high expectations and you have mediocre results, you're disappointed. If you have low expectations and you have mediocre results, you're elated. It just depends how you walked into the situation. Sarah, there's a Maimar Chazal someplace that says that Avram behavtocha, that he had children, and Sarah be'amuna. Sarah was a low expectation person. She wasn't looking the dafka to have anything so much in particular, and therefore kulam shavim latov is a Yiddish expression for those who speak Yiddish over here. Daiken Gott for das far, right? Arya, you know what that means?
No.
You don't. What? Yeah, that's the person says whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu does to me, Gam Zula Taiva. The person says he's happy with what he has. That's an aspect of a person having fulfillment in his time, because I did it, I maximized it, I did the best I can. I have nothing to complain about. Baruch Hashem. That's what a person has to say. All right, I just want to wrap this up. There was much more I really wanted to speak about, but I want to wrap this up with a question a thought for all the people that I'm speaking to here on Zoom. The majority of the people that I'm speaking to here on Zoom are in some way limited in their ability to have activities, whether it's because they're high risk, whether they're frightened, whatever it is. And some people here, it could be they're not limited either, they're just listening. But everybody has this question. In the life of Corona, what are we doing with our time? Are we being a ba bayomim or not? Are we maximizing the time that we have because of Corona? You know, I have a friend of mine that works, and he works in Tel Aviv in some high-tech thing, I don't really know what. And we were chavrusas for many years. Today he works in Tel Aviv, and I spoke to him yesterday, and I said, so how many days a week do you work at work, and how many days a week do you work at home? So I said 50-50. We split up, we're 50-50. So I said, so what seder do you have in your driving time? That now, those days that you're not driving, that means 3 times a week, you have 2 hours extra every single day. Just got free time. So some people, that would be like Gehenna, right? Some people, that would be Gan Eden, right? Each to their own. But here we are in Corona, and we have an obligation to learn from our grandmother. I learned from my Baba Sarah, which my grandmother's name happened to have been Sarah, not what my mother's mother was Sarah, besides of our joint grandmother Sarah. I learned from Sarah Imenu that a person has to be a Baba Yomim, and we have to make the best of it. And that's part of our job, part of our Nisayan in Corona. So as we learn the Parsha and we see the perfection of Sarah, we have to understand that our obligation is to mirror her. Now, I would just like to say something. There's a Maimer Chazal which is really difficult to understand. Rabbi Akiva was giving his shir and people were falling asleep. So he decided he's going to wake them up. So instead of telling them a story like some people do, I'll just share with you. I heard once B'Shem Rav Chatzkel Abramsky, he was teaching somebody how to be a good rabbi, be a good bar darshan. So he said, you know, you're giving a speech and some people are nodding off. Sometimes people are tired. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to stop your shir, cut it short. And sometimes you'll see people during your shir looking at their watches. Also, nishgeferlach. That could also happen. But if you see the guy going like this, trying to find out if his watch is working, then you better end your shir. Okay, that's already you messed up. Okay. Anyways, the idea over here is a person has to utilize what he has. We have these times in Corona, and we're blessed with time, and we have to use the time properly. I will be zeicha in this Corona to appreciate the time which it afforded us. We have solitude, we have time by ourselves, and that is a commodity that 5 years ago we would have coveted. We would have loved to have it. We have it, let's use it. We should be above bayomim. We should be able to utilize each and every day, find something to do that's novel in our Avodas Hashem, whatever it is. And if we do that, we will make our grandmother proud.